Today is the 27th of October, 2009. We are at the Isaac C. Griswold Public Library in Whitehall, New York. My name is Wayne Clark. I'm with the New York State Military Museum and Veterans Research Center in Saratoga Springs, New York. Sir, for the record, would you please state your full name and your date and place of birth, please?
Robert LaFrance, and I was born December 6, 1923 in Whitehall, New York.
Did you attend school in Whitehall?
Yes, 12 years at Whitehall High School.
And what year did you graduate?
1941.
And do you remember where you were when you heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor?
I was on the porch of the YMCA, and we were ready to go to a movies at the Capitol Theater. A bunch of us fellows were there.
That was here in Whitehall?
Right here in Whitehall, yes.
All right. And once you graduated from high school, well, actually, let me go back. What was your reaction when you heard about that attack?
Well, we didn't think much of it, and but lots of us guys felt that it was wrong, and that probably in the near future we should volunteer to help out to eliminate the Japanese for doing what they did.
Did you go into the service, or did you immediately attend college or go to work?
No, I worked at General Electric for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and then a bunch of us fellows that were there decided that we would join up in the service. So there's a friend of mine, and we went to Albany and joined up in the Marine Corps.
Why did you pick the Marine Corps?
I guess the glory, mostly.
Uh-huh. Had you any relatives that had been in the Marine Corps and maybe World War I?
My whole family, and my father was a World War I Army vet. Had a brother-in-law that was a Army Air Force man. I also had a cousin that was a graduate of West Point, and everybody was Army, and they sort of felt different when I come home and told them I was in the Marines, but that I still went and did it.
Mm-hmm. And when did you join the Marines?
In December 1942, just about a year after the bombing in Pearl Harbor.
And where did they send you for your basic training?
I went to Paris Island.
Mm-hmm. Was that your first time away from home for an extended period of time?
Yes, it was, yes.
And what was basic training like?
Well, very disciplined, and I mean, it was different than the life you led before, because
Mm-hmm.
It was really disciplined, and it was some hard deals to go through, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Were you
Boy Scouts. It wasn't Boy Scouts, it was, yeah.
Were you having second thoughts about joining the Marine Corps at all?
No, because you get brainwashed, I would say.
Mm-hmm. All right. Once you completed your basic training, what happened next?
Well, I was sent to several schools, and
What kind of schools?
well, right after I got out of basic, I was sent to what they call a small arms weapons school, and at that school you learn how to operate and maintain all small weapons that the Marine Corps used.
Mm-hmm.
And you were sort of like well, you could call yourself an armorer
Uh-huh.
at that time, but they didn't have that specification. It was just, at that time when I went, there was both, the school I went to, it took the three, well, not the three, it took, there was Navy fellows there, and they also had the Seabees
Mm-hmm.
and the Marines all there at school, learning the weapons so they can maintain them, you know.
Mm-hmm. Now, what kind of weapons were they?
Well, all your rifles.
Were they the old Springfield rifle or the?
Oh yeah, we started out with the .6. We had the .6, and then you were just at that time introducing the M1,
Mm-hmm.
and they hadn't had the carbine yet, but they had them, and they had the .30 caliber machine gun and 50 caliber machine gun. They had the Thompson submachine gun.
Mm-hmm.
They also had another gun that was declared obsolete, which they called the rising machine gun,
Mm-hmm.
which they had for the paratroopers,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't prove efficient, so they got rid of it.
Did you get to fire all of those weapons?
You had to qualify with every one of them,
Mhm.
yes. They also had at that time they had the 60 millimeter and the 81 millimeter mortars that we used to have to take care of. We had to take care of that. After I got done that, I did get assigned to a unit. And then after I was in that unit for a while, it was almost like detached from the Marine Corps and sent to Edgewood Arsenal, Maryland,
Mm-hmm.
run by the Army Chemical Warfare School. Luckily we never had to use it, but they did have other phases that came in handy at the Chemical Warfare School, such as demolition and stuff like that.
And what did you train on at that school?
Well, the whole thing, we learned all the, we had to take sensitivity tests. Actually, we took sensitivity tests on mustard gas and lewisite gas,
Mm-hmm.
which we're glad we didn't have to use. And we had to learn how to decontaminate areas that had been contaminated,
Mm-hmm.
like that. We also had to learn about demolition plus chemical warfare agents.
Mm-hmm.
So if you combine them in war, so if you lose something that if they try to repair it, the agents would be there.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Did they expose you to any gas at all? Did you have
Oh
to...
yes, yeah. That's what the sensitivity tests are. When they give it to you,
Uh-huh.
they put two spots on you, one that is treated and one that isn't treated, and see how you react to them. And there's quite a reaction to them.
Mm-hmm. Did you break out or did you get sick?
Well, you do break out, and then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when you're decontaminating an area, if you aren't buttoned up good enough, you might get what they call vapor burns.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you use to decontaminate an area with? Were there chemicals you
No,
dumped? Or?
most of it was just if you went in an area, lots of it was just plain soap and water and stuff like that. And some places you use sand and various other agents just to decontaminate it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, on your body, they did have ointments that you could use on them. Yeah. But
Okay. Now, after that school, where did you go next?
well, I come back to my main unit, and then after a while, they took us out of that, and they took all us fellows that were trained and sent us to San Diego in a receiving ship out there, waiting to be shipped out to the various divisions so we could bring to them people what we had learned.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest things I forgot when we were at Chemical Warfare School is that we learned they were just introducing the flamethrowers at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and we had to bring that overseas and instruct the people overseas on the use of the flamethrowers. And they tried to have enough men where they could introduce them to each division over there and try to get them into the regiments, one guy to each regiment to teach the various elements how to use a flamethrower. They'd get units to use a flamethrower.
Now, the flamethrower, what did that use for fuel? Regular gasoline, or was it a special fuel?
At first, they experimented. At first, they used regular gasoline. It had in order to operate, it had to be the high octane gasoline, almost the same as they use on airplane fuel.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd take that and mix it with, well, you'd go to the garages and mix it with oil to give it a little consistency.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't prove very efficient, because if you had a wind coming back at you, lots of guys are getting burned, because you had the force, but not enough force to sometimes beat the wind that was pushing it back. So what they actually did, they found out that they could use the same thing that they were using in the airplane bombs, the napalm.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd have your command post where you're working, you'd mix that in the napalm, you'd mix with the gasoline,
Mm-hmm.
and it'd give you a gelled substance, and that was underneath pressure in your tanks, and it'd come out, and it was very efficient because if you shot it at something, it adhered to it,
Mm-hmm.
and it'd stay there. Like if you fired your flamethrower at a tank, you always shoot at the bogey wheels to disable it. And you weren't, one thing you weren't supposed to do, but we did, you weren't supposed to use the flamethrower on personnel. It was almost, I have seen where it was used, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a very, very bad looking sight because
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but they had ways that they use it. And like on your bunkers, if you wanted to use it on a bunker, what the flamethrower actually did is it hit a tank and stay on that tank, and there would be enough heat generated through the flamethrowers, the solution on there, that it'd take the air from the tank, and then the personnel in the tank would have to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And every time that you use a flamethrower, you had infantry supporting you and back.
Mm-hmm.
And then as they come out of the tank, your infantry could take them.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing on your bunkers. You throw your flamethrower at the bunker, usually at the aperture in the front.
Mm-hmm.
They go in there, it'd take the air out of that, and they'd come out. And when they come out, your infantry would shoot at them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's...
Now the man with the flamethrower, was he like a target, more so than a regular infantryman?
Well, they would like to get to him, but I
Mhm.
mean, as I say, he was pretty well covered by infantry.
Mhm.
You know, the infantry protected him, but he was quite a thing, because those flamethrowers, when you had them on, when they were full, with the 2 tanks of gas and your tank up on top to give it the pressure to fire it, plus
Mhm.
your tank that was on the gun, I think the whole thing come up to about 87 pounds, so you had to have a pretty good boy
Mhm.
carrying that. And we had some pretty good fellas with that. Some
Yeah.
did get it, I mean, but not as many as we thought.
Now, how long would, obviously, the more you used it, the quicker it would be used up, but generally, how long would that flamethrower last with a full tank?
Well, I forget just how long it was, but I mean, you usually empty it on whatever you're going
Mhm.
to use it. And then you go back. I mean, you would never store it,
Okay,
because after you once put the pressure on it, that was it.
okay.
You could have the pressure on the tank, but after you put the pressure on the tank, it didn't mean that you had to take and make it all in one shot.
Mm-hmm.
I think your disc had, I think it was 6 ignition things on it when you pulled your trigger.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it had 6, so you give it about 6 blasts if you wanted it.
Now, what was the range on the flamethrower?
Well, they changed. I mean, I don't
I mean,
recall.
approximately 50 feet, or?
Probably, yes.
Okay.
Especially with your napalm, it would go that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would shoot out and go as a glob, right through the air, as a glob, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so you were sent to California.
And then, you know, we were sent from California, and from California I went to New Caledonia to a receiving ship down there till I got assigned to a unit up above.
Now, you went to New Caledonia by
Both.
ship. How long did that trip last?
Yeah, 29 days.
Did you get seasick at all?
Oh, for a while.
Uh-huh.
but we did come over it. And on our way from the States to New Caledonia, we did stop at what we call the Tonga Islands. I don't know if you ever heard of the Tonga Islands. The Tonga Islands is where they had that queen that was 300 pounds. Yes, and she was the boss. But while we were there, we had like a rendezvous there in that harbor. And while they're there, they entertained us with some of their natives come aboard ship, did their ceremonial dances, very impressive, like that. And then as you lay in harbor, they're always looking for souvenirs and all like that, and they were bringing their various stuff like papaya and all like that stuff to us guys, and so it was very impressive. Then we went from there to Caledonia, and when we got to Caledonia, they knew we were Marines, so they put us as far up in the hills as they could find.
Why was that?
Because Marines didn't have a very good reputation any place they went. I don't know. I never did like Eleanor Roosevelt. I hope this don't go well. It's going on to another.
That's all right. She's not around anymore.
I always said what I wanted to say, and the other ones did. But Eleanor Roosevelt came overseas one time before we were getting discharged, and she thought that all Marines should be put in like a detention till they were transformed back in humans.
Really?
Yes. And then I figured I stayed out in the Pacific there for a while, and the day that I found out that I was being sent back to the States was when Franklin D. Roosevelt died. So.
Okay, let's go back to after you were in Caledonia.
Yeah. Well, after New Caledonia, I went and was sent to join the 21st Marines, and that was up in their station at Guadalcanal. I mean, Guadalcanal was all over at that time, but they had a base camp there at Guadalcanal, and we did some training there in Guadalcanal for jungle warfare because we knew that we were going north.
Now the Japanese were all gone from the island?
Most of them were gone. Every once in a while one would pop up, but we did go out on patrols and like that. But then after Guadalcanal, as I say, we stayed there for some training. And then we went to Bogainville, and that was, we went up there. That was not a real big deal, but we still had to take the place in order to advance north.
Now, were you wounded at Bogainville?
No, I got wounded on Guam.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, tell us about Bogainville.
Well, Bogainville, it was real jungle. I mean, that's when you first hit into really actually jungle stuff, and they talked up there. And before we went to Bogainville, we had to take all our fatigues and impregnate them in stuff because of the disease, the dengue fever, malaria, and all like that. And they figured if you impregnate your clothes with this stuff, you wouldn't be getting it.
Did it work?
It worked pretty well, but it didn't last long with the rain. So you just took your chances. Yeah.
Did you have any encounters with the Japanese on Bogainville?
Yeah, we got with them, and one thing that we encountered in Bogainville with the Japanese is what they call the Imperial Marines out of Japan. And in order to get the Imperial Marines, it's quite a thing in Japan, is that not many Japanese are 6 foot or over, but they were. They were big boys, and then they were there before us, and they got friendly with the natives there on Bogainville. And the natives on Bogainville were, 1 generation or 2 generations removed from headhunters. So we didn't get with them too much. But it was bad on Bogainville because it was during the rainy season, and I have pictures at home in some of my books where it shows the guys advancing to the front lines, and they're into mud up here. It's up here through trying to walk to go to the front. It was really rough up there in Bogainville, but and I had quite an experience in Bogainville. It's because when I was on New Caledonia, it was like a receiving ship. You didn't have nothing to do, just waiting orders to go.
Mm-hmm.
So you had lots of free time. I know I used to go down to the post office. They had a fleet post office there, and it was gruesome. I'm telling you, to work in a fleet post office. Because all the mail would like accumulate there, and then you'd have to go through this mail and go through the files, and lots were KIA or WIA or MIA. So you had to do all that kind of work, but it was all volunteer work. They did have some permanent personnel, but they asked the other guys to volunteer. Another thing that interests me is on Caledonia is we had our camp, and up where we used to go to the mess hall, just above where the mess hall was the 1st Battalion of War Dogs. And they were really interested in war dogs. And they had this field that they used to take the war dogs down. And they'd take them war dogs down, and them guys that were handling them would take them dogs, and they do close order drill with them dogs. And it was beautiful to watch them dogs operate. So I used to go down about every day, so I was down there one day, and I always liked dogs. My uncle raised dogs and like that, and I liked dogs. So I was down there one day, and the sergeant come over, he says, "Hey, haven't you got nothing to do?" I said, "No, not actually." I said, "I'm receiving ship waiting to go north." He says, "You come down here, you must like dogs." I said, "I do." He says, "Any special one you like?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I've been watching one." I said, "Like the way he operates." And it was a chestnut-colored pincer. Beautiful dog.
Mm-hmm.
And them dogs are trained just to be with their own. So it's kind of touchy.
Now, by their own, you mean
Just
one
their handler.
One handler.
Yeah, I
Okay.
see. So he says, "Are you afraid of dogs?" I said, "No, I'm not afraid of them." So he introduced me to the dog. It's like, you know, Rusty just as Bob. So good. So we got to know each other pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
So the guy said, "Why don't you come down for a while?" So I went down. He said, "You want to see what you can do with him?" So I said, "Yeah." Everything was arm and hand signals for the dog. Well, I've been watching the guy, so he put the dog off, and he says, "See if you can work." So I worked with him for a while, and he was pretty good. So I never thought nothing of it. After I went from New Caledonia to Whitehall, then to Bogainville. So I was up on the front, not on front, because my outfit was like a secondary line of defense, because we had 37 millimeter and 75 millimeter guns. Yeah. So we were back a little ways, so I got, it didn't feel well, so we come back to the rear area,
Mm-hmm.
and we were going down to the beach one day, and walking along the road to the beach, this guy was coming up the road, and he had a dog with him, and the dog wouldn't heel for him. So he took the leash off the dog and figured the dog would go into the bush and probably have a nip or something in there, you know, but the dog kept on coming right down the road. Well, I had a friend with me, and he saw the dog coming. He was scared of dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So he started to run. I said, "Don't run or he'll take you, because he don't care because if you run, he takes you, because he don't know."
Right.
You know? So the dog came, and if he didn't stop and heel at me,
And he remembered you.
so I looked. I said, "It can't be." So the trainer come, and trainer says, what's going on? I said, I don't know. He says, I do. He says, New Caledonia? I said, yeah. He said, this is Rusty. Yeah, a beautiful dog. So he says, you know, talk to him if you want. So I talked to him, and then I made a mistake. I says, come on up and see me. And he did. Don't even picture with putting his paws right up here and putting his face in your face. Yeah, but he was a beautiful dog. Yeah. I never seen him after that, but yeah. Then we'll get going back down after Bogainville. We got through there successfully. We went back to the canal. That was like our base camp. And we did more studying and stuff like that. And then our next place to go was to Guam. Well, in Guam, they got things a little screwed up there, but we did finally get in. And I know we went in there, and on the first day we went in, we had like reconnaissance trucks because we had to pull our 37 millimeters with them and like that. So with my position as a reconnaissance NCO, I was assigned almost to be with lieutenant at all times because I had the maps and all.
So you were a sergeant at that point?
No, I was just a corporal at the time.
Okay.
And I had the maps and all like that, so I had to stay with the lieutenant. We occupied the same two-man foxhole. So we just had them little spades that you had on the back of your pack. They were just about this size like that, you know. So I said to the lieutenant, I says, I'm going down and get one of the shovels off the truck. He said, that'd be a good idea, Bob, go ahead. So I went down to the truck, and on the way back, I come back, and where the foxhole we were digging, there's an awful big foxhole there. A shell had detonated in that hole where we were digging, and it took that lieutenant that I was with, and we were on one of the edges of the rice paddy, one of the irrigation ditches. It took that man and took him up out of that, where we're digging, in that foxhole, and put him in one of the irrigation ditches. And I come back and I found him there. So I went and got the squad leader, and we got our squad. And we went down and took that lieutenant, the whole squad got underneath him with our arms like that. Brought him up, coming up the hill like that to put him up on flat land. And while coming up the hill, I don't know if he slid or what happened, but he died in our arms, the squad's arm. But what they had found out, that he took a piece of shrapnel between the vertebrae in his back, and when that come down like that, it killed him. So by him being passed away, you just automatically go do it. The platoon sergeant becomes the platoon leader, and then, so actually I became the platoon sergeant because my platoon sergeant had to go to platoon leader. But I never got a rating. I mean, it was just something. So we took the lieutenant, and what you always do, you take his poncho and lay it over him until grade registration comes to pick him up. So it was my duty, being his foxhole buddy, that it was my job to take care of him until they did come. So, so the next morning, after that, being the guy in charge of the platoon, I was checking on the platoon, and I got almost to the end of the platoon, and a shell detonated, and I was knocked off the coconut log that I was sitting on.
Now, was it a mortar shell? Or?
I don't know what kind. I mean, it's big, but it took me down, so the corpsman looked me over and bandaged me up and got me out to the best we could. That was quite an experience too, getting out to the ship. They put you on, well, a duck, like you see down in Albany now, one of them things.
Yeah.
Well, they had us guys piled up like logwood and them. When we go to one ship, can you take anybody on? No. Take anybody on? You're going around. So finally they got to where we went to one of the hospital ship. We used to have hospital ships at that time. And I went aboard a hospital ship. And we got operated on. Took a local. And they went down through my chest and down. And the guy, I didn't think nothing of it because I was ambulatory and all like that, but the guy said, yeah, you got to get operated on right away. We took x-rays and the shrapnel's all going down through your body. So I went in and went on the table and they just give you a local, cocaine or something like that. So
How many wounds did you have?
I just had the one. It started here and then the shrapnel went down through. And so they took what they could out, found out. And then what was the worst thing is when you had to heal from the inside out. So they had this gauze that they put in, this Vaseline gauze. And I'd say that in order to do it right, to put about 12 foot of that in there. And it had to be changed every once in a while. That was rough. So. And but it did heal up, and I had to get off the hospital ship after a while and go to a base hospital.
And where was that?
That was in the Kwajalein Atoll, and there was a bunch of us there. All us guys were there. They were banged up and all of that. So.
How long were you in Kwajalein for?
About a month or so. But like with the modern transportation and all like that they have now, I'd probably come back home. But over there at that time, they'd patch you up and send you back, which did happen to me. I went back and let's see, where did we go then? I think we were still on Guam, yeah. After I come back, we were still on Guam. And we made base camp there for a while till we finally went to Iwo. Yeah, so.
Well, what was Iwo like? Were you one of the first to go into?
No, we were more of a reserve at that time, but we did go in. Yeah, so. And I can remember up there, they were pretty. The Japanese, they can't take it away from them. They're a very smart person. When it comes to ballistics, you can't beat them. I mean, they had places on that, especially on Iwo, they had benchmarks all around that island. It was all surveyed. And you could see it because they dropped these shells right in. They have 4 benchmarks, and right in the middle of them benchmarks is where them shells detonate. And they were pretty smart up there. And then I had to do quite a bit of demolition up there on Iwo. So.
What were you blowing up?
Well, we were blown in their places where they had been, because they were there for a while. They built pretty elaborate places, foxholes. I mean, those guys would just dig a hole and get in, but they had them all fixed up. We'd blow them in, and then finally they found out there was a couple ammunition places that they wanted to blow up, which was kind of tricky because we went down and they came to me, the division come to me and asked me, you know, if I'd get a squad and take care of it. And I said, yeah. So we did go down, and there was a casing that went right down into the ground. And we went in there, and they had a side door you could go into. we went down in there, and they had lots of ammunition and stuff in there. And so we started taking it out, and we were working around there, and we started taking it out, and then all of a sudden we pulled it. So I told the guys, okay, I think you guys better go back to camp, and I'll be back in a little while. What had happened, they had booby trapped. They probably figured, you know, because if you took that box up, it'd trip it off and blow that whole thing. And boy, if that thing blew, you were gone. So I sent the guys back, and I took some black TNT and pretty long fuse and some primer and stuff like that, and I got what I figured was far enough away from it, and they had about a foot piece of cement on top of it, you know, for a top, and I went quite a ways away, and I got into a shell crater that was over there to see how it blew, and all of a sudden I looked, and the top of the casement was going up in the air like that, right up. So I didn't think nothing of it. I was looking at it, and all of a sudden I got a very feeling in my stomach. I was wondering what was the matter. And as I was looking up, I didn't think, and then I looked down, and the concussion had come through the ground. And I was going up too. And then when I come back down, not thinking and not realizing, when I come back down, I come down with such force that my jaws sort of locked, and it broke all the crowns off my teeth.
Oh my God.
And so I never did nothing about it, but
How-
went back to camp, just spit it out, went back to camp.
How far were you from the explosion?
Well, I thought I was far enough away. I was probably, well, the island was only 2 by 4, so I couldn't get too far. 2 miles by 4 miles, so that was a couple 100 feet, I figured. But I always thought afterward that I might have got in trouble by blowing it, you know, because you don't know what with that size that would have done, you know. But you blow this way instead of blow this way, you know, so. But that was it, and then after that we come back to Guam, and after we were there a while, they come out with orders for the guys to come home. Well,
let me just go back a minute. Did you see the raising of the flag?
I was
on
on the beach at the time, yeah. Lots of the guys didn't get off the ship, but that time we were one of the guys that did get off. They come in, but they were there. I mean, I couldn't see it, but we knew something was going on up there. Yeah.
So you saw the flag.
Yeah. But that, as you all know, there was 2 raisings to the flag.
Now, which raising did you see?
I didn't know which raising
Okay.
it was, yeah, but as we know, yeah, and I didn't like what happened at the end. I mean, I didn't like the way that they treated one of the guys that was in there, and he was the Indian. That poor guy died in the ditches. He became alcoholic, and I mean, I thought he was a hero in my estimation, and that he should have been honored, but he wasn't. Yeah.
Okay. So what happened after Iwo? You went.
Well, we come back to Guam, and then after Guam, they decided that, well, it was almost like a point system the way you come home. All the guys were going home, and I had taken over some of the jobs of the guys that were going home, and about 3 days before they shipped out, they figured that, they looked it over, and they figured that I had been in all the battles and all the other stuff that all the other guys had been in, so they sent me home.
Now, was this before the war ended or after the war?
The war was still going on. I mean, well, you know, they were going to go It was before they hit in with the
The
bomb.
atomic bomb.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was April of 45 that they sent us back.
And where did they send you to?
Right back to California, to R&R in California. That's where we got to R&R.
Mm-hmm.
That's where Eleanor would love us to be.
Mm-hmm.
Probably she wanted a fence around us, but she didn't get it. And we did have an experience there. I wasn't there because I got hit the second day, but they told about this guy that was there on the line, and they told me about it, but it was quite a line at that time because they were anticipating this Banzai report attack,
Mm-hmm.
so they had their line there. And this one guy left the line as a deserter. So I didn't know nothing about it, but the guys all told me about it. He was a deserter and all of that. He ran back. He had all these excuses and all. So when we come back to R&R, a bunch of us were going to movies that night. And we're walking down Company Street. One of the guys looks at the other and he says, "Do you see what I see?" And he says, "Yeah, I think it." But he says, "You know, some guys look a lot alike." So as they got closer, they found out that the guy that they saw with an SP band, an MP band on his arm, doing duty at the R&R, was the guy that deserted the line in Guam.
Mm-hmm.
As our unit, the group I was with, that guy took off. He went right to the guard shack, and the boys went right after him. And they advised the man at the guard shack that as long as they were there, that they didn't want to see that guy with an MP band on. They didn't want to see that guy around, and really, they didn't care to see him in a Marine uniform.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't stay there long enough to see just what did happen, but
Mm-hmm.
that's what did happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I got processed there, I come home for my furlough. And after my furlough, I was assigned to the Naval Prison in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed there for about 6 months till I got discharged.
Were you there when the war had ended?
Well, I knew I was there when, let's see, what went first, VE or VJ?
VE went first in April, and then Japan surrendered in August.
Well, there was one of them. I had to be, I had been on Liberty, and I was in Boston at the time, and I had to walk across the Boston Commons from one side to the other to get to the bus that would bring me back to Portsmouth. And I think it was VJ night. And let me tell you, that was one job to try to get through that Commons with a uniform on. Everybody draping themselves all over you and all like this. And I finally did get back. But I did get discharged out of Portsmouth. I did have to go. When I got discharged, I went to Bainbridge, Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you had to get discharged. Yeah, so.
Okay. Once you were, and do you recall when you were discharged?
It was sometime in November, I think, because
Okay.
I recall, yeah, it was in November, but November of 45.
Okay.
Because I remember I got home for Christmas, and I thought I'd enjoy my Christmas after being away, because I was away on the Christmas of 42, 43, and 44.
Mm-hmm.
And so I come back, and my dad, he was really made lots of Christmas and all like that. But what really blew my mind on Christmas is my father, being a World War I vet and all like that, and very much in the Legion, and he did lots during the war with different things. I didn't realize, but he was contacted a lot, and for fellows that were being advanced,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like officers and like that, because he knew the people of Whitehall, so he did that, but he never told me about it, but he did. But the thing that really got me, I still have him, and I treasure him, is he kept scrapbook for me.
Mm-hmm.
Of all the things, you'll be glad to see it someday. I'll bring it over. Of everything, no matter, it didn't have to be Marines, just local guys or what they did is beautiful. But what got me, as I opened up the book, on the first page it had the honor roll of Whitehall. And I went down through the honor roll of Whitehall, and I just stopped like that. I says, Dad, I said, how come? He didn't tell me about my best buddy getting killed.
No.
Yeah. That was Ray Beckwith.
So,
And,
go ahead.
and what happened on that, Ray being killed, is he was out of Franklin. And on my way back from overseas, we pulled into Ford Island, which is part of Pearl Harbor, and I was on a CVE, which is a small aircraft carrier, but we had cots on the hangar deck, and they use it for transport. We pulled into Ford Island, and the orders come over the intercom that all personnel report to the flight deck. That means everybody go to the flight deck. So we all went in the flight deck, and they give as we passed this boat, the commanding officer give the command to salute. And I never knew it till I got back home. But that was a Franklin. And that is the one that my buddy was killed on. And there's three of us guys who were 3 weeks apart in age. There's Ray Beckwith, Ken Whalen, and myself. And we always stuck together. We went through school all the way, all graduated in 1941. And Ken was in the Navy, and they took that Franklin and took it down around, went through the canal and come back up and went into Brooklyn Navy Yard. Ken Whalen come in from the European theater. He docked in Brooklyn Navy Yard, and where did he dock? Right next to the Franklin. So it sort of got me when I found out that Ray had been killed. But lots of my other friends were killed too, but we were pretty close, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's about my thing. Yeah.
So you came back to Whitehall.
Yeah.
Did you go to work right away, or did you go back to school? What
No,
happened?
I went to work, yeah. Let's see. Oh yeah, well they had GI stuff at that time. I worked in a hardware store for a while.
Mm-hmm.
It's gone now. It was on the main street. Whitcomb's Hardware, I don't know if you recall, it was right next to Newberry's, right in that area there. And then I ended up like Gary there. I ended up as prison guard.
Mm-hmm.
That did 36.5 years, and I did them all right down at Great Meadow.
And you retired from
Then I
there.
retired, yeah.
Now, did you join any veterans organizations?
Yeah, I've been into the American Legion. I was commander of the American Legion, and when we got the building. And I also belong to what they call the FRA. It's something that you don't hear about much around here. It's a Fleet Reserve Association,
Mm-hmm.
and it's consisted of all naval personnel, mostly.
Mm-hmm.
They'll take your Navy, Marines, and Coast Guard. And we've been very fortunate, you won't recall, I mean, but the last 3 years, the unit out of the New England the FRA out of, well, Rutland actually, but they bring in other places, have come to Whitehall because it was the United States birthplace of the Navy, and they've had their picnic right there in the Coliseum. And we've had people come all the way from Maine to get into that. I never did join the Marine Corps League because nobody got to us. We had to be away from Rutland. We happened to be away from Glens Falls. But I do belong to them two organizations.
Did you stay in contact with anyone you served in the service with?
Yeah, there's a fellow that lives in Lebanon, New Hampshire. He was in the second platoon, and I was in the second. He was in the third platoon, and I got to him, and we corresponded Christmas time and like that. And at one time, I did meet him in Lebanon when I was going to the coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you attended any reunions at all?
No, because we were diversified. I mean, you know, it's you have to go to. I never did.
Okay.
I have gone. I have taken 2 trips that were through the Marines. It's I don't know just what they do call them, but the Army. I mean the Marine Corps recruit office in Albany contacted us, and I was lucky. I went to Paris Island 50 years after I was there, and Paris Island ain't what it used to be. I thought I didn't know, I thought I was in the wrong place. I thought I was at some college place or something, with their brick dormitories and all like that. I mean, but they're still putting them, the good ones out. I mean, they, you know, and then we're lucky again, we went to Charleston, I don't know whether it's South Carolina or something, but it's what they call the music school, and they have all your naval people go there, and it's really something to see that down there, where they have their bands and all. We also got to see the band that plays for the president, and we also went to the well, they call it the I forget just what they call it, but it's held right in back of the commandant's home there in Washington. And it's a big field there, and it's at twilight they hold these ceremonies, and it's really, really something to see it. Yeah.
How do you think your time in the service changed or affected your life?
Well, I think you go into service and it changes your life a lot. So, I mean, it makes you more of a man than a kid. I mean, it takes the kid out of you fast. And then I think really what I learned in the service helped me a lot when I went into state service. And not really, because it did, because I, you know, working with the people and all like that, and you couldn't take what you learned in the service and put it in a state prison. As Gary knows, I mean, it used to be that the guard was the main person, but with your civil liberties and all like that, it's changed a lot. I mean, I've been out since '85, and things have changed so drastically in the prisons that I wouldn't want to be there. No, I wouldn't be able to contend, because I was disciplined the first day I was in the prison, because I thought I was back in naval prison. I thought that I was the guard, I was the boss, but I found out later that I wasn't, and I was Well, I was put in solitary confinement 2 years. I mean, that's what I did. I worked solitary confinement for 2 years on a midnight day shift because I didn't know that the inmate that I reprimanded was a specialist.
Okay.
Not a specialist, he had a special job. Yeah, but I mean, I didn't go up and ask him what his name was, or look at what color he was, or what his religion was. He was an inmate to me, and I told him something. He didn't do it, and I disciplined him, and I shouldn't have, because he was the warden's runner.
Okay. All right. We have about 6 minutes left. Any questions? Or? All right. Well, thank you so much for your
Okay.
interview.
Glad to do it.
Excellent job.
Yeah.